That's all I had. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce a treat of a man, Professor Richard Schuhmann, who is the Walter Robb Director of Engineering Leadership Development at the Pennsylvania State University. You've all gotten to know him a bit yesterday, and you'll hear from him today in just a quick minute. Professor Schuhmann is also a professor of engineering design and civil engineering, and he's going to talk to us about entrepreneurship and engineering education. Please help me welcome him.
Thank you, Zubeida. And I'd like to start by thanking my friends and students and colleagues from University Qadi Ayad here in Marrakesh, Morocco, and also my friends, students, and colleagues at Sfax University in Tunisia. And also, probably most importantly, to the fathers and mothers and aunts and uncles and cousins of you Moroccans who are here in the audience today. I first visited Morocco 30 years ago. 30 years ago this year. It was in November of 1982. I came to Marrakesh. I visited this city. And I got an idea for a business venture. And in fact, started my first international entrepreneurial venture at the age of 23, and got the idea in this city. And it was really a function of the kindness and the generosity and the hospitality that was showed to me by the Moroccan people. It has kept me coming back year after year after year. It's by far, I do a lot of traveling. This is my favorite country in the whole world. And I'm glad to call it home. So thank you. You know, when we think of entrepreneurship, we tend to come up with visions like these guys behind me here, right? Joe was just talking about Steve Jobs, a quintessential entrepreneur. Right now we've got Zuckerberg, right? These billionaires, young technology, male billionaires, businessmen. But the word is entrepreneurship. It's not entrepreneur. So in a way, it's as if I asked a chemist to explain what an acid is to me, and he or she pointed to a bottle of hydrochloric acid. So it's more valuable to discuss perhaps the proton concentration inside that solution, to start explaining the nature of the material. So that's what I'm going to try to wrestle with a little bit today, is this differentiation between entrepreneurs and these properties embedded within the entrepreneur, which is entrepreneurship. Now, we've got a little bit of a problem when it comes to that. Here's a quote by Ducker from 1998. Peter Ducker, he's the grandfather and the guru of business management, really the patriarch of the whole MBA system. Here's what Peter Drucker said about entrepreneurship in an article in Harvard Business Review in 1998. Today, much confusion exists about the proper definition of entrepreneurship. He's a pretty smart guy. And I can tell you that there hasn't been a discovery in the laboratory, or some philosophical epiphany has not occurred between 1998 and today. We can't go and look up in a dictionary and find the exact definition of entrepreneurship. When we define the domain, the academic domain of entrepreneurship, in a way it's subjective. We find the same problem with leadership. I'm the Walter L. Robb Director of Engineering Leadership Development at Penn State University. I can tell you when I meet with colleagues, I was just in San Diego last week with colleagues from Tufts University, Northeastern, MIT. You get 10 of us in a room and ask 10 of us the definition of leadership, you'll get 10 different definitions. In much the same way, if you get 10 people in a room and ask them about entrepreneurship, you'll get 10 different definitions. In fact, the word leadership doesn't appear in the English language, codified in a dictionary, until the early 1800s. The word entrepreneur doesn't appear in an English dictionary until the late 1800s. So one wonders what happened in the 19th century that required at least the English language to develop and create and embrace the words leadership and entrepreneur. Now, in the time that's passed since the 19th century, the 1800s and today, if you go on Amazon.com, you do a search on the word leadership, you'll find there are 75,000 books available with the word leadership in the title. If you do a search on the word entrepreneurship, there are 25,000 books written with the word entrepreneurship in the title. That's a lot. That's a lot of material. I think mechanical engineering only has about 23,000. And that's a pretty ripe, mature field. So it's an interesting. I want to because I'm going to be talking about the historical context and the theoretical foundations of entrepreneurship. I think it's interesting for us to think about this. And again, this is just in the English language. To think about the fact that until the 19th century, we had no need for these words in the English language. And then in the last 100 years, we've had such a need that we've developed 100,000 books with these words in the title. So, what Drucker does tell us, though, in addition to the fact that there's much confusion about entrepreneurship, is that when he looks at successful entrepreneurs, people like Zuckerberg and Jobs, what he sees that these people have in common is property, like an acid proton concentration. What they have in common is not a common personality. Jobs and Zuckerberg have very different personalities. But both of them share a commitment to the systematic practice of innovation. And we heard some really fine talk on innovation yesterday morning and about the methodology behind it. So, what I would like to talk to you about today is 4 things. Number 1, I would like to walk you through the foundations of entrepreneurship. So we'll take a quick historical tour to try to wrestle with the roots of entrepreneurship a bit. I'd like to look at technology entrepreneurship today. What do technology entrepreneurs look like? I've got to talk about innovation. I'm not going to talk too much about innovation because I can't do a better job than my colleague here, Professor Miller. But I'm going to talk about a couple of just unique cases of innovation that I think are important. And then finally, I'll give you a curricular example of what we're engaged in at Penn State with respect to teaching entrepreneurship at the undergraduate level. And when I give you this example, it's just that. It's an example. Please don't think I'm here today to tell you how you should teach entrepreneurship at your schools. It's really, I think, this type of, with an academic domain that's not defined such as defined as mechanical engineering or civil engineering, there really is a lack of standardization, and I think that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing. I think that programs have to be adapted and modified and created to suit specific needs and specific desires. Okay, so let's take a quick trip back in time to the 18th century. The word enterprise, entrepreneur, entreprendre first appear in Savary's Dictionary of Economic Terms in 1723. 1723. And they're used clearly in the literal sense, entreprendre, in the sense of undertaking some activity, designing and undertaking some project. Later on in the same century, in 1755, we have Cantillon's Essai sur la nature du commerce en général, essay on commerce, discusses entrepreneurship in the context of it being an economic activity that results in unfixed wages. So it's not a very strong endorsement of entrepreneurship as a career move, right? Become an entrepreneur and expect not to have a regular paycheck. So that's sort of what the definition was. True to a very great extent. In the 19th century, we see entrepreneurs more associated with these captains of industry. The J.P. Morgans in the United States, the Rockefellers, these men that were creating railroads and energy companies, coal, oil, large companies, they distinguished from the wage earners, the people they were paying. So here we began to see that not young, nimble, lean entrepreneurs, but more mature entrepreneurs in large industries, large enterprises. But again, distinguished by the fact that they're taking risks, and they are paying people a regular wage to work for them. In the 20th century, we finally begin to see entrepreneurship approached from an academic perspective. Joseph Schumpeter, in 1947, wrote this: "The entrepreneur and his function are not difficult to conceptualize. The defining characteristic is simply the doing of new things, or the doing of things that are already being done in a new way." In other words, innovating. So this is really, with Schumpeter, this is the first time, it's the 20th century, not too long ago, 1947. Schumpeter and Redlich are the first ones to really wrestle academically and rigorously to try to begin applying economic theories to entrepreneurship. See, this is a relatively new exploratory trip. Redlich defined further the roles of people in our economy, saying that those who provide capital can be called capitalists, venture capitalists. They're there to supply money, to invest in enterprise. Those who determine the purpose, the spirit, and the place of enterprise in the market and the national economy. Wow, that's pretty powerful stuff, right? The purpose, the spirit, and the place of enterprise in the market and the national economy can be called entrepreneurs. Those who keep an organization or an enterprise functioning are managers. He goes on to say it's not correct to define the entrepreneur, as has been done, as the man who makes the decisions within the enterprise. In fact, all three make decisions within an enterprise. Clearly, the venture capitalist is making a decision. Right? He's deciding with his money. The manager is making daily decisions to keep the enterprise running. But the crucial distinction being that the entrepreneur determines the purpose, spirit, and place of that enterprise. So that brings us to the present, to the 21st century. And we see that, in fact, from the research that's been done, that generally successful businesses, new ventures, new enterprises, are started by very talented individuals. Clearly. But most of these talented individuals had a prior experience in a mature enterprise. In a mature enterprise. And again, we see in the 21st century, in the early 21st century, that in fact entrepreneurship is associated more with